presentation. Okay, hello everyone. I'm happy to see that you're all here. I'm really proud of you being here too. So I have to look at this camera. Okay. Um, this presentation usually lasts about an hour and a half. However, I really condensed it into 30 minutes. So if you'll be patient with me as I pick the topics that I feel are most, or points that I feel are most important. So now, as I was introduced, I do work for Gallaudet University, the Regional Center South, and Gallaudet University itself is located in Washington, D.C. It was established for deaf and hard of hearing students. I graduated from Gallaudet as well, and I'm proud to continue working for them. As you can see on screen, there's 4 different regional centers. Mine is in the South, and that's the green area that you see there. Those states, there's 13 states altogether. That's the territory that I'm in charge of. The West Territory is like California, and the Midwest in Illinois, and the East is located in Massachusetts. So if you know of someone who is not in the Southern region and they need support, they can see where they're from and then get in touch with those directors. There's a list of shared information and resources and support and all that kind of stuff. Also, I work at Gallaudet University and I work with the Laurent Clerc National Deaf Education Center. And wow, for sure, that is really important for all of you to go to their website. They have a list of information, various topics, webinars that you can do online, and they're all free. It's for family, educators, early intervention providers, just you name it, and we probably have that for you. I think after this presentation, I will have South Carolina Beginnings or Beginning South Carolina share the PowerPoint so that you can use this as a resource for yourself. So are you ready to get down to business of this presentation? Right now, we're going to focus on the topic, the importance of family involvement. Right now, it's really a challenge because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of you probably is having a first time experiencing your children being at home all the time. You have to protect them, you have to watch them, you know, especially with their online instruction. Now, I'm not aware if any of you are back in school physically. However, I'm sure some of you probably are like going in between and kind of frustrated, you know, how do I spend time with my children? How do I communicate? How do I develop that relationship? And that's where this presentation can help to guide you as we continue to go through this COVID-19 pandemic. So what is the general idea of family involvement? What does that look like? We tend to look at the socialization, the emotional, the physical, the academic, and the work area. So those 5 different areas. And so this is what you look at your children as they grow up and, you know, supporting them and navigating them through all of this. And how do we do that? Through communication. We provide them love. You know, we watch out for them and take care of their health. We give them encouragement, positive encouragement, and we guide them towards their goals. But really, you make it, you know, possible for your children to have a future. You invest in their future. Now, this one article that we did the research on by visual language and by learning, and this has different researches that I kind of condensed. One specific focus is on, early exposure to language. Even if the children, are exposed early to speaking English or involved in an intervention program or technology such as hearing aids, cochlear implants, a lot of deaf children still struggle with their age appropriate acquisition of language. We focus on the complex grammar, that we notice this over and over again. Yes, they're exposed to language, they're exposed to hearing aid, they're exposed to the cochlear implants, but they still struggle. And so that got us to wondering. Now, research shows, it says that about 50%, if you look at this, 50%, only get up to like a fourth grade reading level. Now, the others will, develop, but it's like a 50-50 chance here. So, that's still pretty high, to have that ceiling of being able of having a ceiling at the fourth grade language level. So now you're probably looking at this 50% and saying, wow. But the other 50%, they're still successful. They become skilled readers. They get degrees. They, get graduate degrees. Look at me, I am one of them. And you say, okay, that's fine. 50% struggle and 50% are successful. But you're wondering, how is this? So acquisition of early language is very important. I'm not aware of how old your children are at this particular moment or how old the children are that you work with. Not only do they have access to early language, we need to remind ourselves that a lot of families have never met a deaf person before. They have never experienced deaf culture. And communication is more about how do we do this? And sometimes it can become overwhelming, truly overwhelming. So that's why statistics show that it's a 50-50 chance. Do we blame the parents and say that it's the family's fault? No, we don't do that. That's just how life is. It depends on where you live. It depends on your social status, your earning status. It depends on your environment. Are there deaf people there, or have you never seen a deaf person? So there are a myriad of reasons, but it's okay. If you hadn't started yet, we can still pick up from this point and move forward. We still can do that. And it's really important that we always encourage families, educators, early interventionists, and so forth. It doesn't matter. We encourage them to have communication, to be able to interact, to be able to sign, to be able to speak. It doesn't matter. We can have both. And that will support the children's learning. It will form that bond. Their social and emotional growth will be affected as well. When we start early and have all that communication and that interaction, that helps to lessen the delays of learning, and children will be able to pick up the language, have that language acquisition faster. So that's something that you can keep in mind. Like I mentioned before, sometimes you're feeling overwhelmed. You may never have met a deaf person before. So what do you do? How do we get this communication? Well, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And one of those decisions is like, Do I decide that they're going to use sign language, or should I more focus on them having speech? Or why not both? You really have to make that decision to see what works for you and your family. However, you can benefit by meeting and speaking with other families. Maybe you'll meet a deaf family, and they sign very well and interact very well. Or perhaps it's a hearing family that signs and communicates as well. Or maybe another family that just focuses on speech and the child being able to talk. But whatever works for one family may not be something that will work for another. But really, bonding with other families will help a lot. One of my favorite articles, and it's free, and it's from the Laurent Clerc Center, and it is called Odyssey. Uh, and that magazine is sent out every year. And they just have wonderful articles written by families, educators, professionals, and so forth. And this one is from 2017 that's shown here on the screen. It focuses on how deaf and hard of hearing students can be successful in the classroom as well as at home. This particular article always inspires me. It really makes me proud. This young boy here that you see pictured, looking and smiling, he's a former student of mine. And I taught him briefly during my internship. I was teaching English in middle school. And wow, I mean, he just really picked it up and took off with that. And he's still like that today. So his mother wrote this article in that particular magazine, and her name is Brenda Paradin. And it was entitled, oh, I'm sorry, she froze there. Communication and language exposure. It's important that, her son was successful. And as she looks back on that, her son, whose name is Emmanuel Paradin hyphen Joku. And so she talked about her son and how he just loved to read. He read a lot during his school time. And he read a lot of advanced books, for his grade level. I mean, he just really developed in that area, really took off with that. And he was part of the academic bowl at Gallaudet University that they run. They run that program at different schools and they compete against one another. And it's like, wow, so amazing. These kids at different schools, both deaf and mainstream schools, they competed against one another. And oh my goodness, that was just really awesome, that team competition. As well as graduates, the salutatorian, uh, he graduated as a salutatorian and worked as a student researcher. And they competed in the National Association for the Deaf, that competition as well. And he studied in college. He studied at RIT NTID, which is the Rochester Institute of Technology. And he majored in biochemistry because he wanted to become a doctor. Currently, he's still, applying for medical school, and he's working at the National Cancer Institute for a postbaccalaureate fellow. So as you can see, he is really involved in his education and is just doing such a marvelous job. So in this article, the mother talks about people, saying, what is the most important thing? Is there a special key? How do deaf and hard of hearing children become successful? And I said, yes, for sure, they can become successful. The special key is language exposure. So, what did this mother do while her child, Emmanuel, was growing up? She always sat and communicated with them and just carried on conversations, interactive conversation. And they had shelves of books at home, just a lot of reading material. They would also go to the museum, they would go to cultural events. So he was always exposed to the language, the written language, visual language. So he was taking it all in so that he would be able to communicate. So that's something that you can take as something to think about to support your children. And the next video, you'll see Emmanuel, what he's doing today and how he explains his experiences. Now, he focuses on his experience as wanting to become a Black deaf doctor.
Show that Black deaf people like me can be doctors, especially since I have never met or even heard of a deaf physician, yet alone a Black deaf physician. So I believe it's important to have representation. My name is Emmanuel Paradin Njuku with the letter E on the chin. My dream and goal is to become a family medicine physician. In a way, my story started not long after I was born. At birth, I was diagnosed with a condition called congenital heart condition, which means it's present at birth. The official term is pulmonary artery stenosis. And this means the arteries are carrying blood from my heart to my lungs, which are a little bit more narrow than normal. I had to have a small stent guided to the place where my left pulmonary artery was narrow to increase the size of my artery and hold it open. However, about 10 years later, when I was in middle school, I had to have another procedure called catheterization. And the reason for that was to ensure that the stent was the right size and fit to my growing heart and arteries. However, before the procedure, I went to the hospital and I met with a doctor who happens to be hearing and also skilled in ASL. And honestly, up until that point, I had never met a medical professional who was capable of signing. And so for the first time in my life, I could finally have a discussion with my own doctor one-on-one without relying on someone else to interpret. So I asked a lot of questions about the procedure and what it would look like, what my heart would look like before and after, but also I applied everything I had learned in science class about the heart's anatomy. So with direct communication, I could understand the answers to my questions. The doctor commented that I was knowledgeable about the anatomy and asked if I ever thought about becoming a doctor. And honestly, I thought about it up until that point. Well, during that time, I didn't even think or know anyone who was a deaf doctor. I didn't know deaf people could become doctors. So I took the time to do some research and I found out that there was a small handful of deaf doctors in America. And I realized that it is possible for me to be a doctor. And I decided at that point that I was going to pursue a career in medicine. You know, my goal is to be able to provide medical care to people like me in our own language without worrying about communication being a barrier. I also would like to show that deaf people can become doctors, and which is why I think it's important to have representation.
So he just has a beautiful message. He mentioned communication, a key point, and that's where it's really important to know how to communicate. He wanted direct, as he said, direct communication. And that influenced his motivation to seriously want to become a doctor. So that's where, I'm so proud, and communication is key. It is so important, especially with family involvement. Now, some of you are like, oh, okay, where do I get this information? Where do I get these resources? Where is that family connection? Tell me. So, you want to probably know what resources are in your state. You probably have a resource center or an outreach program or deaf peer interaction. So, what do you do? Basically, I went ahead and Googled it, and I went to South Carolina Deaf. I Googled that. That's all I typed in. And I got a list of choices. And so I put together a list for you all. Now, understand, this is not everything that I'm aware of, but this is what I found online. So if you have more resources, I'm sure you can share that with each other. And this is what I found. First of all, we had the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind and the South Carolina Association for the Deaf. And there was just a lot of, you know, uh, chapters in the state of South Carolina. And who's running this event today is South Carolina Beginnings. And South Carolina Vocational Rehabilitation Services, as well as South Carolina Department of Education and the South Carolina Department of Mental Health. They have deaf services. There's also the South Carolina Hands and Voices. And I encourage you to connect as or join as members with South Carolina Hands and Voices, because that's where the family tends to connect and support each other. Also, we have a hearing loss, I'm sorry, the Hearing Loss Association of America, and that's in the Midlands area of South Carolina. As well, we have the South Carolina Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf. So if you need an interpreter, you can get in touch with them. And also I've added some. We have the Gallaudet Regional Center South. I added that resource because you can contact me as a resource, and I can find resources for you if needed. So I hope this helps everyone. Now, this list is for families who are adoptive families, because oftentimes there's not a lot of information out there. Some people who have adopted children tend to be older in age, so there's no language, there's no support. And so this list here isn't a lot, but it is something. The first link, hopefully, I'm sorry, Hope and Healing, and that's located in Minnesota. Oh, that is a wonderful resource. I recommend that you get in touch with them for information. And then the remaining links are articles that talk about people's experiences. And so once you get my presentation, you can see those links and explore that more. And like I mentioned, Hands and Voices, they have chapters all over the state. And I encourage you to be involved with that because it focuses on both signing as well as speaking. And they have different resources. I know I don't have a lot of time remaining, so I will do my best to give you this information. But basically here, these are tools that you can think about and that you can do at home with your children. Incidental learning. That tends to be your everyday incidentals, just part of life. When you are with deaf and hard of hearing children, make sure they're aware of their surroundings and make sure that you include them in your communication. I know sometimes there's a habit of you talking to other people and you forget about them and they're looking and they're like, this is going over my head and I just don't feel involved. I feel that disconnect. So make sure you're involving the children too so that they can see, make eye contact with them so they will understand. And you can communicate with them everywhere, at home, at the beach, in the store, while you're driving on a road trip, just almost anywhere. You know, communication is so important. And I'll give you one example. Like if you go on a walk and you're walking, maybe your kids are looking at trees and they're fascinated by the trees. Then that's your opportunity to, go with them and say, let's look at this tree and explain and communicate about the tree, like the bark, what it feels like, the colors of the tree, and how the branches form and go out. The green leaves or, brown leaves, just communicate that, and that's incidental learning. So they have that opportunity presented to them there. And again, eye contact. Make eye contact and make sure that you're either speaking or signing or both, but it still requires eye contact. Deaf and hard of hearing people will always be visual learners. And there's different ways that you can support their reading and writing skills. You can play games. And playtime tends to be fun, a lot of fun. So now, if you have something fun, you can teach them at the same time. Take advantage of that, and it'll become more meaningful to the children. And there's different kind of things you can do to have the playtime, outdoor activities, make believe, so you can do that, as well as manipulative things such as puzzles and so forth, and then creative arts like music and drawings and so forth. So they're learning through books and games to increase their skills. So you have a lot of different avenues to play around with, and so that learning can be a fun time. And have a print rich environment. That's important as well. When I was growing up, my mom, she usually would have a card with words on it and she would have them all over the place, just everywhere. And that's how, well, my parents are deaf. I just want to let you know, my parents are deaf. And so signing was my first language. American Sign Language was my first language, and English my second. But my mother taught me both. So I really picked up on ASL and I learned how to read very quickly. I had my first words when I was 3, and that was really important. And you could use magnets, and as you can see, the different items here, they're on the screen, puzzles and so forth. And these are ABC signing blocks. So you can see the hand shapes there. And this is label around the house where you can make your own labels. As you can see, that's fun. Also, you can really increase their vocabulary skills. I like to use cookies for an example. And who doesn't like cookies? So you know that we have a variety of cookies, right? So I'm just going to pick one from this list. Chocolate chips. Okay, so obviously the first word that you're going to be teaching them is cookie. And that's just, in general, it's a cookie. But now, how can you scaffold that? So you have the cookie, and now what's the next step? What kind of cookie? chocolate chip. And I like to sign chocolate chip this way, like chocolate chips. It's so much fun. Once that's done, now you can move on to brand names. And my favorite is Chips Ahoy. So you have that building of vocabulary, building their vocabulary skills. And this is just one fun example. And these are other different ways to include vocabulary, picture books, posters, collages, family trees, conversations, puzzles, songs, and lap time, where they sit in your lap. And that's how we improve their reading skills. You know, we sit and we sign together. 20 minutes. I know a lot of you say, I have no time. I'm really just, don't have enough time, but it only takes 20 minutes. And that makes a big difference. I mean, a big difference. And so that also helps you to develop a bond with your children as well. Now, I'm going to have to wrap up here soon, but here are a few resources from Gallaudet University. Remember that I was telling you that I work with the Laurent Clerc Center, and they have a lot of online stuff and resources and learning that's in print. So they just have a lot. And so you can click on the link, info to go, and then you can see what you need, and then you can click on that, and then it will give you even more resources. Here's one example of free online learning, a webcast. And they set up language in motion. And they have 7 modules, learning modules, where you can learn different things. And it's like 12 to 20 minutes a piece. So you don't have to look at them all at the same time. You can pick and choose what you would like to watch. That's something you can decide for yourself. And then these are some of the different topics that are involved in the webcast that focuses on early identification, hearing testing, hearing aids, language learning through sign, cochlear implants, communication and language at home, and family support. Also, I know that many of you, perhaps your children are in mainstream schools or at the school for the deaf. It doesn't matter. But I'm sure you have IEP meetings or the 504 meetings, either one. This app, it's Parents Support app, and it's free. And that's one way that allows you to, you get into the app and you learn yourself how to advocate for your children so that your children can learn to advocate for themselves in the future. As you can see, there are features there. They have introductory information, IEP meetings, 504 meetings, and other school meetings. So it's a checklist and notes and the questions, common questions, and strategies, resources, and videos. Oh, wow, they have amazing videos. And they're free, so I encourage you to do that on your phone. Now, the VL2 for the visual learner, remember that I showed you at the beginning of the research brief? So begin there. You can get that from beginnings. There's a lot of information for parents. They have a toolkit. They have information packages. They have tutoring. The VL2 storybook apps is also something that they have. And of course, research briefs, resources and research briefs. Now, this is one example of the app, the storybook. The Baobab, this is a wonderful story. It has, the words and the sentences, as well as someone signing them at the same time. And it's really cool. The kids are very fascinated by this one. And also we have ASL Connect. It's free ASL classes online, deaf studies online, business ASL training, and soon in the future, in several months, we will have a family focused resource online. And here are also other resources. By Hands and Voices, FL3, Family, Leadership, and Language Learning. And they have various articles and information for family to family support for deaf and hard of hearing adults. I mean, it's just a variety of things, lots of information. And the American System for Deaf, American Society for Deaf Children, who is run by parents of deaf children and deaf adults as well. So that's another one you can join as a member. And this is the last thing that I'm going to throw out there for you before we wrap up. And you can download stories, and they also have vocabulary lists and a variety of information that's truly cool. And really the goal for this and all the topics of sharing is anything is possible. And you can do it. And your children will be thankful and will thank you for being involved in their lives. You are here today. If you're watching this, that means that you are motivated and you are very rare, but that you want this, that you want to be more involved. So I'm so proud of you for being here. And I really want to thank you for inviting me today to share all of this information. And remember, this presentation is really an hour and a half, so I did eliminate a lot of stuff, but hopefully I shared enough to get you to thinking and ready to roll up your sleeves and start the work. So I wish you all the best of luck, and I hope that all of you are okay at home. I hope you're in good health and that you have the support that you need. Okay, so thank you.